This episode is brought to you by Welch's Fruit Snacks. Back to school season can be tough on parents, but choosing a snack you and your kids can both get behind doesn't have to be. Stock up on Welch's Fruit Snacks, made with whole fruit and now made with no artificial dyes. It's a snack kids already love and one you can feel good about giving them. Go back to school with Welch's Fruit Snacks, now made with no artificial dyes.
Hey friends, Olivia from Ollie. Between new routines and the ultimate group project known as parenting, you need science-backed solutions that work with your life. That's where Ollie comes in. Start your mornings off right with multis made to support nutrition and immune health. Choose from our lineup of gut-supporting probiotics, and we've got occasional sleep support to help the whole fam chase their big dreams. Head back to class with the #1 gummy supplement brand. Stock up on ollie.com today. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and you're about to listen to a hypnosis session about worthiness, self-acceptance, and resilience. And it was actually created for a client that had spent about 2 months in a hospital after surgery where there were certain complications that meant they had to stay, and they were just on the verge of leaving. And they really wanted to feel that they could cope with having to go from being dependent to independent, and also to feel that the journey that they'd been on over the last 3 years was building and transforming them into the person they were meant to be. And it uses a metaphor of copper sulfate. Now, copper sulfate is a particular compound. It's a vivid blue powder. And what's interesting is if you put that into water, it just turns into a blue liquid. But if you keep adding the copper sulfate into the water and you keep mixing it, it reaches a point where there is too much of the copper sulfate to be a liquid structure. And then almost instantly it forms quite a complex crystal, a very vivid blue, very strong structure. And this is the ideal metaphor for this particular client because they felt that they were doing a lot of the right things, insights, challenges, responses, clarity on their values. And all of this was just another scoop of the copper sulfate into the liquid until finally, suddenly, there's that solid crystal. And they felt that this was almost becoming true for them. So even if you're not leaving hospital, I think this is a powerful metaphor for transformation and evolution because most people have been doing the right things and everything hasn't quite clicked into place yet. And that's why this is such a powerful metaphor, so that everything you've been doing up to now has a very, very powerful unconscious metaphor. So if your unconscious is ready to take everything you've done and click it into place, this is going to be a powerful hypnosis session for that. Now, it was created for an individual, and as such, some of the suggestions might be very relevant for them and not quite right for you. So if you like the idea of working with me directly rather than listening to the recordings that I've done for other people, have a look at the link in the show notes or visit my website, adamcox.co.uk, and there you'll be able to book a consultation call. You get that at a discount if you use the coupon code podcast. You get that at half the price of anyone else that just finds me online. And we can discuss working together and what that would mean. For now, though, you might get some real value from this session. So find a quiet, comfortable place, the kind of place you're not going to be distracted or disturbed. Relax and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in And as you breathe in that slow, long, relaxing breath. And as you exhale, give permission to release any frustrations, any anger, any tension. Just slowly, incrementally, letting go with every outward breath. And when you breathe in deeper than you normally would. And as you exhale, allow the outward breath to carry on for longer than it normally would. Breathing in relaxation, breathing in resourcefulness, and releasing whatever needs to be released on that outward breath. And maybe you find that the deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the deeper you breathe. As you scan your body for any clues of tension, maybe in the shoulders, the neck, the jaw, even around the eyes, releasing on every outward breath. And as your body relaxes, your imagination awakens. And I want you to allow your imagination just to drift to a wonderful place where stories create meanings and meanings create whatever change is most useful right now. That's it. And I want you to think of a time when you were a child, when you were hearing a story. Maybe a bedtime story, or maybe you were older and it was a story being read to you. A fascinating story. And I want you to imagine a story about a chemistry teacher who was preparing a demonstration with copper sulfate, a simple glass container where clear water was gradually becoming deeper and deeper blue as more of that copper sulfate slowly dissolved into it. Just a tiny bit more, and then a little more, until eventually that solution looked completely ordinary in one sense. Still liquid, still flowing. Nothing apparently solid there at all. And yet, the teacher knew something that the students did not. That the solution was becoming saturated, and almost everything required for the crystal was already present, invisible, distributed throughout the water, waiting. And the teacher lifted one final tiny amount of copper sulfate and said, "Watch carefully, because sometimes the biggest change appears to happen because of the smallest addition." And just before adding it, allow your mind to drift to another story. Perhaps somewhere in the back of your mind, a dog running around, but running around someone that the dog loves, not analyzing anything and not proving anything, not documenting anything, just running, heart pumping, legs working, pure movement, enthusiasm, joy, and life. circling around and around with that unmistakable expression animals sometimes have when they are completely absorbed in just being alive. And the person standing there in the middle suddenly realizes something important, something so simple that perhaps it could have easily been missed. But let's leave that moment there for now, because for these next few minutes, there is nowhere else you need to be, nothing you need to do, and just reflect on the last 2 months spent in an environment where almost everything has been decided by someone else. When to eat, when to sleep, when medications arrive, when someone enters the room and when someone leaves, what you're allowed to do and where you're allowed to walk. And after enough time, in a place like that, it would be completely understandable for at least some part of the mind to temporarily forget what independence feels like. Not to lose independence, but just to forget the feeling of it. And there's an enormous difference, because something forgotten can be remembered, and something unused can become familiar again, and something temporarily dependent was never necessarily incapable. And I want you to connect with the idea that you have already started proving that to yourself without even trying. I want you to get a sense that simple things are coming back, not as an achievement you have to announce, and not as evidence for anyone else, but things that you just did because something inside you had already changed before the conscious mind noticed. And maybe that's how independence returns, not as a dramatic declaration, but as a sequence of ordinary moments. Standing, walking, choosing, organizing, learning new medications and completing the paperwork. And I wonder if certain things just came back so naturally, like it's no big deal. Because in a few days' time, you'll be re-entering what may feel like an unfamiliar world. Except you've lived in that world for decades. You've operated within it, made decisions within it, and solved complicated problems there in that same world. And now you simply begin applying that same intelligence, judgment, and resourcefulness, perhaps in a softer way than before. Because maybe something has changed. Maybe there's nothing to prove, no validation needed. What if now it's simply living on new terms, for joy, for growth, for learning, for an adventure, for impact? And I wonder how enticing that new life is. Because your life belongs to you, and you can treat yourself accordingly. You are worthy to have a nice place after all of this. And perhaps the deeper truth is simpler still. You are worth having a nice place, no matter what. Full stop. Not because of what happened, and not because you're recovering, and not because of who you were or what you did for the world, but simply because you are allowed to care for yourself, because you are you. And maybe that's what an accumulation of these last 3 years have really been crystallizing. Not creating a new person, but revealing the person who was already there. Because copper sulfate does something fascinating. When the crystal finally forms, the substance doesn't suddenly arrive from nowhere. It was already in the solution. The ingredients were already there. You simply couldn't see their structure yet. And perhaps that's why this idea fits so beautifully. For years, there may have been moments of thinking, who am I supposed to become? How enlightened should I be? How successful, how good, how impressive, how special? How much approval is enough? How much proof is enough? How much accomplishment finally establishes that I am enough? And what if the answer was never hidden in another accomplishment? What if the answer was already dissolved throughout the whole experience? Every book, every conversation, every patient, every journey, every relationship, even every mistake and disagreement, every moment of insight, and every moment where something felt right, and even when something felt wrong, and when you stood up against something simply because it violated one of your values, and when you stood beside someone just because they needed help. Moments in nature, hikes, art, music, wonder, curiosity, humor, love, all of it added something into the liquid. More copper sulfate entering the solution. More of you becoming available to yourself. Until eventually there comes a saturation point. Not an end point. An outcome. A moment where something that has been gathering invisibly begins to take shape. And perhaps for months, these things that were difficult did not break you. What if they simply accelerated the crystallization? Because there is a profound difference between being broken and being reorganized, between being damaged and evolving and changing, between losing yourself and finally discovering what remains when everything unnecessary is stripped away. You've had your independence challenged, your health challenged, your patience challenged, even trust, identity, and a sense of control were challenged. And yet, look at what remains. Humor, curiosity, intelligence, integrity, values and capacity. The love of things like life, nature, and joy and your desire to help all remain. Dreams remain. Your ability to solve problems remain. The judgment is still with you. And maybe what has disappeared was never essential. The need to perform or convince or prove. The need to be special and unique. Or win some imaginary argument with the past. And what if the need to finally become good enough is now part of what has been stripped away? Because how do you learn to feel good enough when you are simply already good enough? There is nothing to achieve there, nothing to defend, and nothing to persuade anyone else of. It just is, and you just are. Whole does not need to mean perfect. Whole means nothing has to be excluded. The strong part belongs. Even the frightened part belongs. The wise part belongs. Even the angry part, the generous part, the stubborn part, the part that sometimes gets scared. You do not become whole by eliminating everything inconvenient. You become fully whole by saying, yes, that's part of me too. And there can be confidence and apprehension at the same time. And there can be excitement about freedom and still concern about responsibility. There can be gratitude for medicine and yet still anger about how you were treated. Strength and exhaustion can coexist. There can be independence and still appreciate support. There can be pride and humility. And none of these things cancel each other out. In fact, they are necessary to complete the crystal. The crystal does not need every surface to look identical. The beauty comes from structure. Different planes, different angles, different surfaces reflecting the same light differently. And perhaps you can imagine yourself now as one of those extraordinary blue copper sulfate crystals. Not fragile glass, a structure, something that has emerged because everything necessary was already there. Deep blue, clear edges, distinctive, ordinary chemistry producing something astonishing. And maybe that describes human beings rather well. Plain and yet amazing. Ordinary and yet miraculous. Human-sized and magnificent. And you don't need to be a guru, a hero, or the most enlightened person in the room. You don't even need to be right all the time. What freedom is there in that? You simply get to be yourself. The best version of yourself does not mean better than anyone else. You can't be the best someone else, and no one else can be the best you. You simply occupy your own life completely, your own throne, knowing everyone else has got one too. No hierarchy, no competition, no defense. And what if that is real sovereignty? not dominating anything and not controlling everyone. Simply belonging to yourself, your judgment, your values, your choices, and your dreams. It is your life. And I wonder if you can think back to that dog running around. See the joy. See the endless exuberance, passion, enthusiasm. And I wonder what you can take from that, what you can harness from that. That's it. And as that dog runs around, the person right in the center suddenly understands what was so important about that moment. Life itself was enough. Not the possessions or the status, not the performance or being impressive, but simply the experience of being alive, sharing a moment with another living creature, feeling the body move, seeing joy, and being present enough to notice it. And as you see that distinctive black and white dog complete another circle and come back around to the center, back to the person they already know, with no need for that person to be improved, no need for a performance, just recognition. There you are. And perhaps that is what returning to life can feel like. Not becoming someone new, but returning to the center. There you are. And let's drift back to that chemistry classroom. The deep blue solution. Students watching. The teacher holding that tiny final amount. Everything already present in the water. Everything required for the structure already there. And the teacher finally lets that tiny amount fall. And then the solution changes. Crystallization begins. Beautiful blue geometry appearing where moments earlier there seemed to only be liquid, as though something appeared from nowhere. But of course it didn't. It had been gathering all along, molecule by molecule, moment by moment, experience by experience, until the conditions allowed what was already there to become visible. And perhaps these last 3 years have been exactly that. Not building a worthy person, and not fixing a broken person, not creating someone good enough, but crystallizing, making visible what had been there all along. And these 2 months, what if they were simply the final few molecules, the unexpected catalyst, the experience you would never have chosen, but which somehow clarified what mattered? And now the crystal exists, and not because nothing difficult happened, but because all of it was incorporated. And no experience can now tell you that you are broken, because you know what you are. Whole, human, plain and amazing, good and yet imperfect, strong and sometimes frightened, independent and capable of receiving help, proud and humbled, a wonder, a joy, not better than anyone and not less than anyone, simply yourself, which is more than enough. And as you hold that thought, it's time to return, drifting, floating all the way back to the present, having that image of that solid crystal in the vivid blues deep within. So take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, connect and calibrate into the here and the now as I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.
Class is now in session, and the UPS store is here to help you ace arriving on campus. Our certified packing experts can pack everything you need, from desktops to decor. Plus, when you pack and ship with us, you get our exclusive pack and ship guarantee. Your items arrive safe or your money back. Restrictions and limitations apply. To get a 20% off packing coupon and for full details, visit theupsstore.com/packing.
Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.